This is Arab Talk on KPOO 89.5 FM in San Francisco. This is Arab Talk with Jess and Jamal. I'm Jeshan Nam.
And I'm Jamal Dejani.
Jamal, we have a great show today. We're going to be covering a lot of breaking news and events regarding Palestine and the Arab world, the ongoing genocide and destruction of Gaza, and the killing of civilians and starvation of Palestinian civilians continues unabated. The UN World Food Program has fully depleted its food stocks in Gaza, and it continues to be on the brink of grave starvation for the over 2 million Palestinian civilians. In addition, the Israeli military, as we have reported on here before, admitted that its troops were behind the deadly shelling of a UN guest house in Gaza last month after previously denying this responsibility. This is in line with ongoing denials that the Israeli military have done when they killed a lot of Palestinian medics, denied it. The footage came out showing that they in fact did, and it seems like the Israeli military is backtracking on their denials of their atrocities that they're committing in Gaza. Details of the Gaza ceasefire currently being pushed by the U.S. and Egypt and Qatar emerge. It seems like there's a lot of progress on this, except for one element. Israel continues to negate and not really go along with these peace talks. It appears that the Israeli government continues to want to push the genocide and the carnage in Gaza, despite the world condemnation and attempts by everybody to want to create a peace deal. Finally, Israeli National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir, unknown Islamophobe, anti-Palestinian racist, hateful right-wing extremists of the Netanyahu government, and by the way, an admirer of the notorious Baruch Goldstein, who was convicted in Israel for incitement to racism. Ben-Gvir is on a speaking tour in the United States that included Ivy League universities. It's quite extraordinary. We're going to be covering all those stories today, Jamal. But before we get to that, we're going to watch a really fantastic interview that you did with Ronnie Barkan. He's an Israeli dissident and co-founder of Boycott from Within, talks about the First Jewish Anti-Zionist Congress to be held in Vienna coming up June 13th in 2025. It's going to be featuring prominent speakers such as Israeli historian and author Ilan Pappe, Holocaust survivor Stephen Kapos, Nakba survivor and researcher Salman Abu Sitta, Dalia Sarig, co-founder of Not in Our Name initiative founded by the Jewish community in Vienna. This is going to be quite an event. I'm worried that it's going to get canceled, Jamal, but your interview with Ronnie Barkan was really great.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure they've made, provisions. And of course, there are different venues and the internet and so forth. Let's watch Ronnie Barkan. The First Jewish Anti-Zionist Congress will convene this coming June in Vienna, Austria. Globally, increasing numbers of people with Jewish heritage are denouncing Israel's insistence that it is the single legitimate representative of all Jewish people. The founding principles of this Congress are Viennese Jewish Anti-Zionist Declaration, penned in December 2024. It starkly rebuts the Zionist ideology that bolstered the founding of Israel and instead sets forth a path for peaceful coexistence through justice for indigenous Palestinians and the recognition of their legitimate claim to their ancestral homeland. Ronnie Barkan is joining us on Arab Talk to talk about the First Jewish Anti-Zionist Congress. He's one of the featured speakers and is a long-time Jewish Israeli activist and math teacher. He's also the co-founder of Boycott from Within. Welcome back to Arab Talk, Ronnie.
Hi, Jamal. Thank you for having me.
This is an historic event, both as a first, but also because of it being situated in Vienna. Explain the historical significance of the location.
So first of all, Vienna is basically where Herzl basically brought about the Zionist ideology into practice. There's even the Herzl stairs there, for example, in Vienna. And I know that our friends there They have a whole anti-colonial tour of Vienna, and they go through many Zionist locations, Zionist sites there. So there is a lot to be said about the Zionist history of Vienna. We have basically come together to call for this Jewish Anti-Zionist Congress. Now, even with the term, it could be a little misleading, so let me explain. It is not about Jewish this or Jewish that. It is not about the self-identification as Jews. Rather, it is about the Zionist state that claims to speak on our behalf, and we, those that the Zionist state claims to speak on our behalf, are coming together to have a clear front, or I would even say a declaration of war against Zionism and the Zionist state. And this is especially important given the ongoing genocide. It was important for the past 100 years and more, but it is definitely important these days.
So although the source of this Congress is Vienna, there is already an impressive lineup of speakers from throughout the world, Jewish and Palestinian, from a very diverse array of disciplines, including religious scholars and authorities. Can you give an example of how diverse a representation there will be?
Yes. So I mentioned that this is titled the Jewish Anti-Zionist Congress, but it is very important to say that this is an inclusive Congress. It is not at all exclusive and only for those that are identified by the state, by the Zionist state as Jewish. Rather, it is about us coming together along with our Palestinian partners and allies from across the world. So there will be quite a few Palestinian speakers because things are changing still. The program is in the making. I don't want to mention names that are not absolutely certain that will participate. So, but we do have people like Ilan Pappe, Lamislik, who is a wonderful lawyer and advocate and a fighter for Palestinian rights. There will be Chaim Bereshit, there will be Iris Chefetz, I forget names, Stephen Kapos, who is a Holocaust survivor, and many others. The whole discussion is not only about the history of Zionism and the struggle, the Jewish struggle against Zionism, and the struggle in general against Zionism. That is one part of the Congress. But we will also focus on the practical measures that are needed in order to abolish Zionism, and also discuss the day after. Once we manage to succeed in this struggle, we also have to build something for the future. So all of these things will be incorporated in the discussion. It is not only an academic or a historical discussion. This is part of it. And there is a long tradition of Jewish struggle against Zionism. We obviously know about the Palestinian struggle against Zionism, which will be mentioned, but also about the coming together in order to move forward and to discuss the practical measures in order to be able to eventually arrive at a free Palestine, a liberated Palestine that respects the rights of all the people of that land.
But don't you also think that this is a significant demonstration of how broad the rejection of Jewish identity being co-opted by Israel is?
Yes, we know how the Zionist state, which claims to be a Jewish state, even though it has nothing to do with Judaism, because Zionism has precisely nothing to do with Judaism. They are antithetical to each other, I would argue. We know how the Zionist state is using and abusing Judaism all the time, and also by claiming to speak on our behalf. This is why there is a need to push back against that. And as I said, to call out, to completely and utterly reject any such claim that they speak on our behalf. No, we are on the side of humanity. We are on the side of the indigenous Palestinian people, and we all struggle together. Maybe we are not equal in our status. Some are among the privileged group, others are among the underprivileged, the ones who are under the boot of Zionism, but we are all resisting together Zionism and its very long list of crimes for well over 8 decades. So we have to completely and utterly reject any and all conflation of criminal supremacist Zionism with Judaism, which is a religion and nothing else. Other than that, and we will obviously do that, other than the rejection of that false conflation, we obviously have to reject the false accusations against anyone who is anti-Zionist as if they are somehow anti-Jewish or any other form of racism. Actually, anyone who is anti-racist is also necessarily anti-supremacist and anti-Zionist. And finally, we actually have to work together, all of those different people that I mentioned. And this is not a quote-unquote Jewish-led organizing. It is simply coming from those who are among the privileged group, but we seek the full cooperation and to be led by our Palestinian partners in the struggle against Zionism.
Was going through the website for the conference. The call to Congress is a strong denunciation of Zionism and the wrongs it has visited on Palestine, but it is also a powerful tribute to the oath from the survivors of the Mauthausen, I think I'm pronouncing this Mauthausen Nazi concentration camp. And this is what it says: the permanence in the camp, lasting years, has reinforced in our minds the knowledge of the value of brotherhood among the people of all nations. True to these ideas, we make a solemn oath to continue to fight firm and united against imperialism and against the instigation of hatred between peoples. Thus, one of the principles of the Congress is to truly honor the vow of never again as it relates to humanity. Is that correct?
Absolutely. It is the vow of never again, especially given the ongoing genocide, that we should have been able to stop, or not even we should have been able to avert altogether. But because the world has not learned, we have to insist on this never again right now, as this genocide is happening in front of our eyes. And we take inspiration from, for example, the people who were liberated from Mauthausen along with their liberators. And they wrote this statement together for the sake of humankind. And it is really a message of brotherhood and sisterhood of people who had to endure the most atrocious crimes, Nazi crimes, which are comparable to what Israel is doing today. And we are trying to walk in their footsteps and do something similar, in the sense of having this message of, I don't want to say brotherhood, sisterhood, of joint cooperation among all of us in order to put an end to this ongoing monstrosity that is happening right now in Gaza and the rest of Palestine. And this message from Mauthausen is reiterated in many languages, and it was written in many languages, and this is also a very important aspect to it. It is a universal message.
The Viennese Jewish Anti-Zionist Declaration, penned in December 2024, lays out its alternative ethics to Zionism and states that Zionism only furthers anti-Semitism. Explain why this is the case.
Yes. So first of all, I will say that you will find two declarations on the website, because there is the Austrian community, Jewish community, that came up with that declaration of December 2024, and they have actually initiated the coming together in this Congress. Later on, we had another declaration that is, let's say, more of the universal approach. So you have both aspects. And as to answer your question, yes, Zionism has not only, from its early days, Zionism has not only promoted a supremacist ideology, and a nationalist ideology, where basically people had to go to another land and rather than remained in Europe, had to go to another land and establish their life there. But they also fundamentally fully adopted the anti-Semitic discourse against them, because they were told that they were treated badly because of their Jewish heritage. Many of them were not at all religious. They were actually anti-religious, but they were still treated badly. They wanted to be like the rest of the European society. Herzl wanted to be regarded as just another European, another Austrian, but he was rejected by the society. So after the first attempts, where actually in his diary he writes about how we should all mass convert to Christianity and then problem solved. This was one of his ideas. He didn't manage to convince, he wasn't successful in convincing his fellow Zionists with that. So this transformed into this idea of exclusivity. Okay, we are being treated differently. Therefore, we can never be part of this society that we live in, and we have to go to another place to establish a society which is totally exclusive for us and only for us. So they have fully adopted that anti-Semitic discourse and have reiterated that discourse, only with a different end goal of, because they fully adopted anti-Semitism, Jews, according to them, could not remain in the lands where they were residing, whether it was in Austria or the United Kingdom or anywhere else, and therefore they had to uproot their lives from there and go to a whole other place and then take over another land of other people and settle there. So, and on top of all of that, they also established a place that is exclusive, therefore rejected the existence of the indigenous people there. And this is obviously the tragedy of the Palestinians that we are struggling against.
The declaration also cites Jerusalem Declaration on Anti-Semitism from March 2021 as providing a timely definition of anti-Semitism that separates legitimate criticism of the State of Israel from hostility or prejudice against Jews. In contrast to the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance, the IHRA, it does not conflate criticism of Israel with anti-Semitism. Talk about this.
So, first of all, the IHRA is a joke. It is not, you cannot define in a cyclical way. You cannot use the same term in order to define what you are trying to define. So that is for one thing. The other thing is that it doesn't hold water. From a legal perspective, it means very little. The other thing is that it was all done for purely political Zionist reasons, and if that's not bad enough, that quote-unquote definition, which is actually not even a definition, that is one thing, but then there is a whole list of examples, and the examples have nothing to do with the definition. The examples are all about, basically, if you are critical of the Zionist race state, then you must also be somehow anti-Jewish, which is something that has to be completely rejected. Basically, the whole idea that if someone is critical of that Zionist state, that Zionist criminal Zionist race state, is also somehow anti-Jewish. That also means, the very logic of that statement also means that if someone is Jewish, in the broad sense, that means that because of their Jewishness, they must also be supportive of that criminal apartheid state. And saying all Jews are Zionists, that is the most racist thing that you can say about Jews. First of all, treating any group as a monolithic group, that is already racist. But when you say all Jews are Zionists, it's just like saying all Muslims are terrorists. Okay? It is something that has to be completely and utterly rejected. Now, I reject any and all conflation between Zionism and Judaism because they have absolutely nothing in common. They don't have the same values. They don't even have the same characteristics. For example, I mentioned that Zionism is inherently and fundamentally exclusive in its very nature. Judaism, on the other hand, even though it doesn't try to convert people, it makes it difficult to convert, and even still, anyone may convert if they want to. It is an inclusive religion. Okay, and once someone converts, it's a long process, it's not recommended and so on, but if someone chooses to convert to Judaism, after this long process, they become a full-fledged member of the Jewish people, which is a religious term, like Ummah in Islam. So even just when we talk about the characteristics, okay, Judaism is inclusive, Zionism is exclusive. Judaism is all about it is theocentric. It is about God and the worshiping of God. Zionism is ethnocentric. It is about ethnicity, racial ethnic characteristics. It is about the state and the worshiping of the state. And on and on. I can elaborate on that, but you can see that not only that they have completely different values, they are totally antithetical to each other in every possible way. So I totally reject any conflation between the two. What the IHRA definition, misdefinition, is trying to conflate these things and saying if you're critical of one, you are necessarily critical of all the other, and I explain why this is not the case, not from the logical aspect and not from the moral aspect. There are other definitions of anti-Semitism which are much more accepted by both by academics and by the general public. For example, one of them is the Jerusalem Declaration. But I think that for our purpose, for the purpose of the Congress, we are well beyond that point. I'm not here to convince anyone to be anti-Zionist. This is a congregation, a coming together of people who are anti-Zionist, who will make it very clear that they are anti-Zionist and what is to be done as the next step forward. We will discuss the attempts to silence us. And these attempts to silence us involve the things that you mentioned, these false accusations of anti-Semitism and so on. It is obviously much more difficult to accuse people like myself, who was born there, who comes from a Jewish background and so on, even though I don't identify as Jewish, and it doesn't matter. I don't identify as Jewish. I am still part of this Congress because, as I mentioned, it is not about how I self-identify. It is about responding to the criminal Zionist state. But we know that the Zionists are very much responding to this Congress already. Benjamin Weintraub, for example, a self-proclaimed journalist and affiliate of the FDD, which is this neocon, horrible think tank, which is working hand in hand with the Israeli government. They were exposed, actually, in Al Jazeera's investigation about the Israel lobby. They were exposed as being, the FDD as being working together with the propaganda ministry of Israel, with the Ministry of Strategic Affairs. So this Benjamin Weintraub is already woke up from his slumber and is now trying to act against us, to silence, to cancel that Congress and so on. But obviously we're not intimidated. On the contrary, it is just showing us that we are doing something that is important, and that the Zionists feel that they need to respond to, and that is just another good sign that we are on the right track in order to eventually abolish Zionism.
I mean, Jews throughout history faced discrimination and anti-Semitism, racism, and basically people wanted to silence them. I mean, that's at the end of the day is to kind of take away their narrative. Do you feel what's happening now, whether in the United States or in Europe? Because as we're seeing the events unfolding in the United States on college campuses and so forth, so many members of the Jewish community, like Jewish Voice for Peace and so forth, are also under attack. And so isn't it kind of, in a way, cynical to see that now again Jews face being silenced because they are critical of Israel?
I think that is a very telling sign. You know, it's not only Jews that are being silenced, but also, I mean, even in Germany, where I'm staying right now, we see this in full force. I have had the anti-Semitism Tsar, the one who is responsible for anti-Semitism in Bavaria, in the region where I'm staying, trying to cancel my recent talk in Munich, for example. Okay, I have had the secret police coming to a talk of mine and trying to warn me about the things that I'm talking about, because I was talking about the legacy of the White Rose, the anti-Nazi Germans who were struggling against Nazism and paid with their lives, and I was taking their words and implementing their very words of the White Rose to the current struggle against for the liberation of Palestine, with Palestine Action, direct action against Israeli crimes and so on. So I was being warned, and they tried to silence me in different ways. I was actually even taken to court in the past in Berlin for standing up to an Israeli war criminal by the name of Ali Zalavi. So all of these things have been happening, are happening in full force right now. I would urge the people who are being silenced, or there are attempts to silence them, first of all, to remember that they are not alone, that we have groups and we have each other. And also, I make it less of a personal issue of, oh, I'm being silenced. And, I would rather not promote this, let's call it a whiny discourse of, oh, they are silencing Jews once again, for example. Rather, I think it's the opposite thing that we should promote. We should stand up and say in a very clear way that we will not be silent and we will carry on. When in the UK, they have changed the laws, the entire legal system, specifically in order to put people of Palestine Action and also Extinction Rebellion and the environmentalists, to put activists in prison for those activists who are standing up to Israeli crimes. They are now placed in prison under all kinds of draconian measures. Now there's a new anti-terrorism act that is enacted in the UK where people are being placed in prison and so on. Even though they are not charged with terrorism, they are being arrested in the middle of the night and so on. And yet, you see the activists in the UK stepping up. They are not keeping silent. There's more and more and more people joining Palestine Action. And this is really, really encouraging to see that. The same I see also happening in the US. The more that there is crackdown against activists, the more that activists speak up, the more that they get together, the more that they join forces. And this is what is needed, because we are clearly seeing the fascist forces united and becoming more and more basically more and more extreme in their measures, and we seriously need the anti-fascist forces to unite across the world. And I'm happy to see this happening on a small scale. I would love to see this also happening in a larger scale. And this Anti-Zionist Congress is simply one step in that direction.
Well, you're talking about steps and specific goals for the first Jewish Anti-Zionist Congress, which it wants to achieve. Will this serve as an opportunity to formulate the next steps and priorities?
Yes, I should hope so. First of all, the plan is the program, which is not yet public on the website. It will be soon once everything is finalized. There will be discussions, panel discussions during the first couple of days on different topics, as I mentioned before. But the third day is dedicated to the input from the audience and seriously discussing about the ways forward. So we will be discussing parts of that already during the first couple of days, but the third day is specifically about exactly the things that I mentioned just now, coming together, different groups, Jewish, Palestinian, and anyone else. Everyone and anyone is invited. This will be a very clearly anti-Zionist gathering. So if you're not anti-Zionist, maybe this will not be a place that you will feel comfortable in. And all of us will be coming together to join forces and to discuss the practical measures of what is to be done. And I think that I expect a very interesting few days of discussion throughout this Congress. And as I mentioned, this is only one step on the way, on probably a long road, but a very needed step as far as I'm concerned. But it is definitely not an exclusive effort. It is about joining forces.
Is interest and support growing since the convening of this Congress was announced?
yes, I am hearing a lot of support. People are booking their tickets. People from North America will be coming, and other places, and people of all backgrounds. It is very, very encouraging to see that. So people from far away, people of all backgrounds. I hope that we will be able to also offer subsidized tickets for people, so that really we can bring participants from all over the world, also from faraway places, and people who may be financially supported. I cannot promise that, but we will do our best.
The elephant in the room is the ever pervasive censorship and coercion of those criticizing Israel. Given that there will be extensive Jewish representation here, do you think Austria will be obliged to back off to some degree?
I think that they will have to evaluate what they are doing. Obviously, everything that we are doing is perfectly legal. It is not only legal, it is absolutely essential, both from the moral and the legal perspective. And this is clearly a Jewish-initiated effort. If they will try to silence us, we have different ways of going about it, which obviously I will not elaborate. But I hope that they will simply do the right thing and let this very needed effort to take place in Vienna.
So if people want more information, where can they find it?
So they should go to the website, and allow me just 1 second. I will pull the... Yes, this is, it is Jüdisch Anti-Zionistisch.at. That is the website. I know that most people will have trouble finding that just by the name that I mentioned, but they can search for Jewish Anti-Zionist Congress. We will also make it much more public in the coming days, and I hope that you will also add our website to the discussion here.
Well, this is very exciting and hopeful to kind of hear about this discussion and what's going to transpire afterwards, and declarations and so forth. It's a very interesting initiative, especially since it was initiated by Jews who are from Austria. I mean, from Vienna. Ronnie, thank you again for coming on Arab Talk.
Thank you so much for having me.
That's the voice in the face of Ronnie Barkan. He's an Israeli dissident and founder of Boycott Within, talking with you, Jamal, about the first Jewish Anti-Zionist Congress to be held in Vienna on June 13th, 2025. This is an historic meeting, Jamal, in terms of the people who will be speaking. Large segments of the Jewish community, both within Europe as well as globally, as well as Nakba survivors from Palestine, including Salman Abu Sitta. I mean, this is a groundbreaking event. I mean, attempting to disentangle and disaggregate, as you know, criticisms of the government of Israel with anti-Semitism. This has been ratcheted up recently, obviously, by the United States and the Israeli government attempting to conflate those. Ronnie gives a very compelling analysis, as usual.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct. And, there's a lot of information to unpack and to understand the history of the first Zionist Congress, which happened basically in Austria. Now, more than 100 years later, now those who oppose to Jews who are opposed to Zionism and their allies, I guess, they're coming together and saying that Zionists don't speak in our name, and that's where we're seeing, because it's very important, for people to understand this whole idea behind that all Jews support Israel is wrong, and conflating criticism of Israel and criticism of Zionism with anti-Semitism is also wrong, and it should be a very interesting conference and discussion that's going to happen. And I saw a list of very, very prominent names who will be presenting and speaking, and we look forward to see the outcome of it.
Yeah.
Moving on, just to, the big story today is the UN Food Program, which put a press release saying that it has depleted all its food stocks in Gaza, where Israel has blocked deliveries of humanitarian aid for 7 weeks. And Israel has cut off aid starting March 2nd and resumed its offensive 2 weeks later after the collapse of a 2-month ceasefire, saying it was putting pressure on Hamas to release its remaining hostages. The UN says that Israel is obliged under international law to ensure supplies for the 2.2 million Palestinians living in Gaza, and malnutrition is rapidly worsening. I don't know if you saw the images of some of those children.
Yeah, it's devastating.
Last week, one of the UN humanitarian partners screened 1,300 children in northern Gaza and identified more than 80 cases of acute malnutrition, a twofold increase from previous weeks. Children are dying, Jess. The UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, OCHA, also says that they have severe shortages of medicine, medical supplies, and equipment for hospitals, whatever left of those hospitals, which are overwhelmed by casualties from the Israeli bombardment, and severe fuel shortages, which are hampering water production and distribution.
Well, Jamal, this has been going on, as we know, for 18 months now, that there has been some let up in the starvation program that Israel has engaged in Gaza. Periodically when some people, when hostages and POWs are being released, there's some small let up in that starvation program. But let's not mince words here. Let's be very clear. There is a deliberate attempt to starve collectively Palestinians in Gaza to death, and that starvation program is killing people. It's starving children to death. The UN food program, it's not like it's bringing in extraordinary amounts of food. It's bringing enough food in just to ward off, if you will, extreme starvation. It's not enough food, Jamal, by any stretch of the imagination. And even that food is being denied entry. What makes this situation especially worrisome and especially immoral is that there's plenty of food to come into Gaza. We have hundreds of trucks waiting to get in with food, water, and medicine to come into Gaza, but Israel continues to deny entry of these trucks into Gaza to feed the over 2 million Palestinian civilians. So, this kind of gets to some of the other things that we're going to talk about today, Jamal. This has been an Israeli policy to literally starve Palestinians to death. Now, some people say that this is a policy, a negotiating policy, but I think, as you and I have articulated, this is not a negotiation policy. This is part of the ethnic cleansing and the attempt to rid and depopulate Gaza of Palestinians. So it's a very worrisome development, Jamal. I don't see that there's going to be any push, obviously, from the United States to get the Israelis to let food in now. So the situation looks very grim for Palestinians in Gaza.
Well, in what international law or humanitarian edicts, just that you use children, you starve children, to say you want to free up some hostages or you want Hamas to surrender? You're using here, they're starving children, killing children, basically, aside from the bombing them and killing them, but also using starvation as a weapon to force Hamas to do something. But last show, we talked about how Israel killed 15 emergency workers,
Right.
covered the crime, buried them. Now we're getting also more reports that the soldiers not only shot them, but they reloaded and shot them again. That's
In the head.
by a report from the Israeli newspaper Haaretz. A video emerged. Everybody saw that video, and Israel got caught in its own lies and denials. And then earlier last week, Israel said, "Oh, that was a professional failures." Imagine, professional failures. Nothing.
I don't know what that means.
I mean, professional failures. No talk
Yeah,
about
what does that mean?
holding anyone responsible. And because these are war crimes and compensation for their families and so forth. But anyway, that's that story. We moved on, like the media moved on from that story, which I don't think they should move on. And now, a week later, Israel admits the killing of a UN worker with tank fire, which again, they denied the responsibility and they said this didn't happen. And they killed Marin Valev Marinov, a Bulgarian employee of the UN Office for Project Services, UNOPS, when the UN compound in Deir al-Balah was hit by basically tank fire on March 19th. And the Israeli, of course, military spokespeople said that this never happened, that they weren't even in the area. And now they admitted that the troops had in fact killed Marinov after wrongly, according to the Israeli military, identifying the building as containing an enemy presence. This is a known UN facility with the UN written on the roof of it, on the sides of it. It's marked on the maps and everything. So again, they just bomb and shoot indiscriminately, ask questions later, deny, lie, deny and lie, and deny and lie, until there is irrefutable evidence, most likely like a video, that says, here you are, red-handed, killing people. And then they just say, oh, we made a mistake. We misidentified. We made a mistake. I mean, what kind of justice is this?
Well, I think, first of all, no one should believe Israel. No country, no body, no institution, no NGO. I mean, basically, the Israeli government and its military have been built on lies. Jamal, as we know, has consistently lied in the last 18 months and has consistently lied in every war and every atrocity that they have committed, not only in Gaza, but in the West Bank and Jerusalem. But you and I have been pointing out these lies for decades now, Jamal, and I'm kind of curious as to when will people kind of begin to see this pattern and practice of lying consistently. I mean, people should not be believing anything coming from the prime minister's office, from the government office, from the Israeli military. Yet the media here in the United States continues to take these press releases as, as fact and not really question them. But I do think it's important that these are being called out, are being revealed. But as you can see, Jamal, and you rightly point out, it's not as if the Israeli military or government are taking responsibility. They're coming up with this bizarre statement. It was a professional error. Oh, we made a mistake, without taking responsibility.
I mean, look, in this country, if you get in an accident and somebody dies, you're charged with manslaughter, even if it's an accident. I mean, there is a responsibility for your wrongdoing. Israel kills and murders people day in, day out. They attack people who work for the UN. They kill children. They attack hospitals. They attack the World Kitchen. Killed the convoy, bombed the convoy, and so forth. And then they deny it and they lie about it, they try to cover it up, and then they say, okay, it was a mistake, and nothing happens. That's all what we see. I mean, the list, like I'm sure there are reports and there's a lot of evidence. I don't know when this is going to come in front of, I mean, aside from the International Criminal Court, which was unable to today to arrest Benjamin Netanyahu and his former defense minister because they have warrants for their arrest. And how long it's going to take to bring all these soldiers and all these commanders who give orders to their soldiers to attack UN facilities and kill UN employees.
Yeah, that's right, Jamal. And, there is some work internationally going on. We've covered this in the past. We'll cover it in the future. There's the Hind Rajab Foundation in Europe right now, which is collecting the names and the lists of Israeli soldiers who have committed these war crimes, compiling them, developing the evidence, and working to issue these arrest warrants against these war criminals. So it may not happen today, it may not happen tomorrow, but I do believe there is a strong international commitment to hold war criminals like Benjamin Netanyahu, like his cabinet, and like the Israeli soldiers, most of whom have committed these war crimes, accountable. Unfortunately, Jamal, it won't be in time to take the painful reality away from Palestinians living in Gaza, West Bank, and Jerusalem now, from this painful reality that they face every day. But there is some international movement.
So, details of the Gaza ceasefire deal currently being pushed by the US, Egypt, and Qatar emerge. I don't want to spend a lot of time on this because I don't feel that it's going to succeed because we've seen what happened before. I'm hopeful it will succeed.
Inshallah.
There is a new proposal which includes significant changes, but those changes, I find it that Hamas is unlikely to accept because they've already said that, including the disarmament of Gaza. So, according to a draft proposal, upon signing the agreement, Israel would cease its military attacks and overflights, and Hamas would immediately release the dual U.S.-Israeli citizen, Ilan Alexander, as a special gesture to the United States. Ilan Alexander is a 21-year-old New Jersey native who enlisted in the Golani Brigade of the Israeli army in 2022 after finishing his high school. And he was captured during October 7. So this is like, he's supposed to be, I don't know if you saw the video, and there's a big controversy now with the Mahmoud Abbas, the Palestinian president, calling, Hamas sons of dogs. They should let him go, and so forth. So that's also making some headline. But then after they do that, then Hamas would release 5 additional living Israeli captives in exchange of 66 Palestinians serving life sentences and an additional 611 who were taken by Israel in Gaza during the past 18 months. And then it goes on to step number 3 and 4 and so forth. But then this is the sticking point, because the original deal, if you recall, and then Israel kind of reneged on it, was the initial exchange. Israel would begin pulling back its forces from Rafah and northern Gaza and end up with a full withdrawal of its forces at the end of phase 1. This never happened. That's why the cycle of killing and bombing Gaza and so forth continued, because Benjamin Netanyahu didn't want to do that. So now they're saying we'll do some of that stuff, but we want to maintain basically presence, redeploy their forces. Israel, the Salah ad-Din Street, the main north-south thoroughfare running along the entire enclave, basically cutting Gaza in half, and then also controlling the Netzarim corridor. In other words, Israel does not want to leave Gaza. I mean, if you look at it,
they don't.
They want to stop their military operations, according to Israel, like stop the bombing and the killing, but they want to have presence basically in different sections of Gaza. So that's one sticking point, because the original deal said we're going to end hostilities. Israel will withdraw, totally withdraw, and then they want Hamas to be disarmed, surrender, basically total surrender, Hamas to lay down its weapon. And so that's why I said I'm not optimistic about this deal, because Hamas is saying, no, we're not. And we're not going to do that, because we've experienced, meaning Palestinians, when they've done that in Lebanon, Sabra, when they got rid of their weapons, then Sabra and Shatila massacres happened. And so this is where we're at. That's
basically
why
we're at nowhere, Jamal.
So
nothing.
Yeah. So the U.S. is putting a lot of pressure. Qatar is putting a lot of pressure. Egypt's putting a lot of pressure, but we're stuck somewhere. And every single day, if you look at the recent reports, Palestinians keep getting killed, and now there is starvation, ongoing starvation. People are suffering. The food, as we've mentioned earlier. So I don't know how long this will continue until some meaningful intervention, and the only intervention I see is by President Trump to say enough is enough.
Well,
and
Jamal,
we gotta stop the killing.
No, I think if we stay rooted in reality and rooted in the history of the last, especially 18 months and beyond, we understand, and we've said this so many times, Benjamin Netanyahu has no interest in stopping the genocide in Gaza, the murders and the starvation. And there is no political will within the Israeli cabinet to change anything. President Trump and his inner circle have no political will to change anything. So I don't see any change in the foreseeable future. I think, the killings, the massacre, the genocide of Palestinian civilians continues. The starvation continues, despite international world condemnation. And Jamal, we said this last week, right, in our last show, which is the world opinion of Israel has plummeted, especially in the United States, among the general population. The majority of Americans view Israel very negatively, and by the way, that's true globally right now too. So I don't see any change, unfortunately, and it's ongoing genocide full steam ahead, and this is a very bleak time globally right now, and I'm afraid that I have no optimism that this is going to change in the foreseeable future. Do you?
I don't know. Meanwhile, the Israeli National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir, who's a disciple of Meir Kahane and who's an admirer of the notorious mass murderer Baruch Goldstein, who also was convicted in 2007 in Israel for incitement to racism and supporting terrorist organization, is on a tour in the United States. He also claims that top U.S. Republican lawmakers support bombing food and aid depots in Gaza. He made that statement that he met with top Republican. I don't know who met with him, frankly, but he said that they support what he believes in. And the meeting happened at Mar-a-Lago, by the way, in Florida. This is someone who also calls for the expulsion of Arab citizens of Israel. And again, like I said, he supported the Jewish terrorists like the late Rabbi Meir Kahane and the murderer Baruch Goldstein, who massacred 29 Palestinians worshippers in Hebron in 1994. He was confronted he was eating in a Manhattan steakhouse. I found this kind of funny because someone hid in the bathroom for 2 hours and then stormed into his private event in the steakhouse, calling him names and get the F out of New York. And they have the protester, I guess. He got arrested, Gabriel DeFazio, who was swiftly removed by security, and you could see that there's a video of that. Then he went to Yale University, which you've mentioned, I believe, on Wednesday. Hundreds of demonstrators, along with the resignations of several members of the Jewish society that hosted him. So people, he was hosted by the Jewish Society in Yale, and some members resigned because of extending that invitation. Then the following night, he went to visit the headquarters of Chabad Lubavitch movement in Brooklyn, and there were also scores of more protesters confronting him, and there was a scuffle, and you could see another video. A woman got bloodied, basically, got attacked by his supporters.
Right.
Other scheduled events have since been canceled, which I'm just looking at the list here. He was supposed to meet with the Hasidic congregation in Brooklyn and the modern Orthodox synagogues on Long Island, and these have been canceled. And my question is, this is someone who the United States should not have let in. They're canceling students' visas and things for criticizing Israel. And there's someone who have calls to murder, basically, Palestinians in the West Bank and elsewhere. And he's a big fan of a big terrorist, Baruch Goldstein, who originated from Brooklyn, New York.
Yeah. Well, look, Jamal, let's be clear about this. The United States is deporting people, trying to deport people, deny visas. Marco Rubio says he will revoke visas of any terrorist sympathizer. You have Itamar Ben-Gvir, a known terrorist sympathizer, who not only is given a visa to come to the United States, but is celebrated by, meets with the president and his inner circle in Mar-a-Lago. So the interesting part of your story, though, that you just said, is that the resistance and the confrontation of Ben-Gvir has been very, very strong. People are not going to let him come to the United States and go unconfronted. So wherever he goes, he's being confronted. And as you said, some of these events are in fact being canceled. But this is an absolute stain on American democracy right now, to bring this terrorist sympathizer to the United States and give him a free pass. I mean, luckily, people are standing up and telling him to leave the United States. I'm just surprised, Jamal, that, this is one of the individuals who has called for ethnic cleansing of Palestinians, who should have an arrest warrant too with the ICJ. So, he should be arrested rather than celebrated.
You've been listening to Arab Talk on KPOO San Francisco 89.5 FM. Go to our website, arabtalkradio.com, to download the latest shows, and we'll talk to you next week.
See you next week.